Welcome to the Uncommon Truth. Today, Bob and I are joined by our guest host, Irwin Ki from San Francisco, California. Irwin is an angel investor and sales coach and author who works with VCs and founders searching to support the next generation of founders who are going to change the world. Prior to investing, Irwin was a top enterprise sales leader at Okta, OpenDNS, Cisco, and BMC. I met Irwin as we both have been journeying on a journey of growth. And we're traveling and transforming our lives as Tony Robbins Platinum Partners. What I've learned from Irwin is he's passionate about constant, never-ending improvement and bringing value to people in all he does. Irwin is a husband, a friend, and a creator of value in all circumstances. Thank you for joining us today on today's journey to find the uncommon truth about bringing value. Hey, Irwin, thanks for being here today.
Oh, what's up? What's up, everybody? Feeling good.
Nice. So one of the things that I'll just start out with is I always like to try to start with a quote. And Albert Einstein said best, try not to become a person of success, rather become a person of value. So let's just jump right into it, Bob. Good morning. And what do you feel is the most important attribute or attitude toward bringing value to people and our clients in business?
The most important attribute is bringing positive energy, just like Irwin displayed in the greeting. So what we want to do is if we're going to bring any kind of a service to a client, we've got to have that positive attitude, which will be a magnet effect in and allow you to build a good, strong relationship with the person or get you off to a good start. So first impressions are really important. And I think that when we make connections via text, we make connections via Zoom calls, we make connections on the phone or at conferences. Those first impressions are important. So we should have a good short elevator pitch that describes who you are. But it's all about that energy that you're going to be passing to the other person. And then you see what kind of response you get from that, and you go from there. I would say the other thing that's really important is you have to have a set of interesting questions to start to build the relationship. So if we're going to build a relationship, you want to be able to talk about common things that are probably not even in the sales realm, not in the business realm. You want to know something about the person. You want to know about, are they married? Do they have children? What are their recreational activities? What are their hobbies? Things that are safe to discuss, but fun to discuss too. So I'm always looking for the common denominator. What is the person I'm talking to? What are they interested in? And where's that mesh with me? Where's that neat intermingling? If they're married and I'm married, we've got something in common. If they have kids and I have kids, we have something in common. They're windsurfing, not uncommon, right? I might be interested in the windsurfing thing and ask questions about it, but when you find things in common, you can build a relationship. You can start to build a relationship. There's some beginning thoughts.
Well, that's well said. So, Irwin, what's your thoughts on those, the important attributes and the attitudes? Are they things of passion, knowledge? What are they?
So first off, I think what Bob just mentioned is really good in the first few minutes of a sales conversation. You want to bring the energy. You want to build, what he's talking about is building rapport. It's finding commonalities in what we're going through. You know, when I think of what is the most important in a sales conversation, my belief it's the underlying intention that a sales professional has, which is the intention of helping others. At the end of the day, great salespeople have the intention of just helping an individual and seeking to find what problem do they possibly have that you can help with. Because in my world of solution-oriented B2B sales, It's always a discovery of finding what are the problems and selling the problem before you sell your solution. And in order to do so, you need to ask those questions that Bob's talking about to find what are the unknown pain points, the initiatives, the needs on a technical perspective, the needs on a personal perspective that every person is maybe not even realize that they have. And once you find that, that conversation goes from a pitch to a consultative, hey, we are solving a problem together. And again, back to the core of it, the most important thing, in my opinion, is the intention of helping others. And coming from that place, the questions, the concerns, or the how you lead the phone call, different things can come up naturally through the unconscious mind from leading from that place of intention. That's my belief.
You know, I think both of you have spoken congruently to what I believe. I think that personally connecting and building rapport is a really, really key element that is quite often not really expressed enough. And I think it can be said that people, I'm going to actually use another quote, which just really affected me, in that in building rapport, everyone enjoys being acknowledged and appreciated. Sometimes even the simplest act of gratitude can change someone's entire day. Being grateful that someone's willing to talk to you, to allow you in to help fulfill one of their needs. And taking the time to recognize and value that person and to just appreciate that they do make a difference in what they're doing. And if we're focused on helping them, that's going to make them trust. And ultimately, trust leads to the rapport that you just spoke about. What do you guys think about that? Would you agree?
Yep.
Sweet. So
yeah, 100%. 100%. I think Irwin hit it bang on the head. It's approaching it with the right attitude and the thought to serve first. It's almost like a servant salesperson. You've heard of servant leadership. It's a servant for sales. And you go in there looking to help someone with really no thought of money. It takes all the stress off a young salesperson. Like a lot of time, young salespersons go into work a client, and maybe there's 40 grand on the table or 100 grand on the table potentially. They get nervous. They get worried about losing the sale, and then all that relationship building is in the background, right? Their fear comes out. Their worry and their fear comes to the forefront, and people can feel that. People can feel when a salesperson's there to sell for the sake of money. So when I'm coaching or talking to young salespeople, that's what I say is you have to take the money off the table. I never go into a sales meeting ever thinking about the money, so I just want to support what Irwin said. It's go in there with a heart to serve, go in there with a heart to help, and don't worry, the sale will come when it's time. Sale won't come if there's no relationship or a weak relationship. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, I agree, because people buy from people they trust. So there has to be an element of trust in order for business to be transacted. But again, not all. So there are salespeople that are selling, and their primary method of selling is through relationships, through building relationships, and it works. But there's different sales personas. There's the hunters, that their job is to go get new business, and then there's the farmers who their job is to upsell and sell existing accounts, and those are very oriented to relationship. Versus the hunter, they may not have it. Like, I think of a new startup, new brand, new market, new salesperson. There needs to be a relationship built very quickly. But if you look at a discovery call, they're usually 30 minutes, maybe an hour. So then the question becomes, and I see this a lot with early new salespeople, is they may spend too much time trying to build the relationship when you have that one shot, you have that one 30-minute conversation, and what I want to add to kind of like, when I think of what's the second thing that, on top of just intention is a level of expertise. So in the business of enterprise sales, software sales, so much of sales training in our business is spent on product training, is spent on learning technical solutions, so that when you show up on these calls with these technical buyers, you are the expert of whatever product that you're selling, whatever segment of industry. Because when you have that expertise and you're coming from a place of service, your status in how the customer views you is like, oh, you're no longer a salesperson, you're the expert in this industry. You're teaching me stuff. You're asking me questions that I never concerned about. And that, like, to your point, Bob, builds the rapport. People want to, when I think of sales and the whole process, everyone buys differently. There are people who need a product to work, so they need that sense of certainty. There are people who need to feel important. They want to buy the best shelf product, or they want to get the best deal. They want to work with the executive of the company, so they want to have that need of significance. Some people would want to grow. Some people want to just get educated that, oh my gosh, the product and service that you're buying is the newest and best solution or product out there. And it's difficult to pigeonhole every customer persona, because every customer's needs are different. And that's the fun of being a salesperson, is coming from the intention of, okay, I'm going to solve your problem, but I also need to discover, what are your needs? How do you like to be sold to? And great salespeople learn that this person may need that relationship building first, or this person just wants to learn how you are the best product out there, and how you can, create the pain points that they didn't even realize that they had. And then the light bulb clicks off. It's like, oh my gosh, you are the expert. Your company is the leader in this space. And then the dance is so natural from there. It's like, okay, let's work together. Let's get a trial set up. Let's get a demo set up. Let's get your executives involved in this conversation. And then let's create a sales process together. And you don't even say that. You just create, hey, what do we need to take to move this thing along, and start mapping it out step by step together. So I think to add on to, what I heard is rapport number one, right? Step one, totally dead on. You need to build rapport and trust. Step two, or like what I thought was important, is intention. Coming from a place of intention doesn't make you sound like a sleazy salesperson. You're really coming from a place of service. But in order to come from a place of service, you also need to educate yourself to be the expert in your space, so that you seem credible, you seem trustworthy, and you're not wasting anybody's time. So I mean, these are great ways to stack onto what people need, and there's more. There's obviously more. There's layers to the game. There's a different matrix to become Neo, right? There's so many things, but these are the foundational building blocks we're naturally building up.
Mm-hmm. You addressed a few things that I think that are really important to maybe just take a moment to touch on. And you talked about needs. As we've learned over the last, over a lifetime, but specifically over the last couple of years, all of us have these human needs that we require: certainty, variety or uncertainty, adventure, significance, need for connection and love. And then we have those other fulfillment needs, which are of growth and contribution, right? And giving back. And I think that process of going through and being interested in the person, what is their form of life? What's going on for them, and what of their needs are needing to be met? A person isn't wanting to be in a relationship if it's not going to fulfill one or two or more of these needs. And they're not going to buy a product unless it's fulfilling a need. And more often than not, we miss the cues on what the real need being fulfilled is. And you sort of alluded to it there, Irwin, that a lot of the time, it'll be significance or certainty. Those are the most common of our 6 human needs on what we buy things. We want security, we want stability. Those are certainty needs, right? We want the best price. And then there's significance of, it's the highest quality, it's the biggest and best known brand, it's the product that all of my friends or family or company colleagues or clients have. So I want the same thing, whether it be buying a Rolex watch or a Timex. You know, it's driven by those needs. So that's a great, I think, sort of thought for us to consider, that when we're asking these key questions and building rapport, are we actually interested in what interests them and understanding their why? So
Yep.
I think you've said it well. And I always sum it up: personally connect and build rapport. Same thing. So that's it. That's step one. I agree. You said really, really well as well. Well, how do we do that? Well, you got to ask questions. And what do you ask questions about? Well, if you're uncertain, I call it form. What about their family and friends? What about their occupation? What about their recreation, health and wellness? And what about their motivation or education or just passions or hobbies? There's so many things that you can just use that little acronym to actually, if you're stumped and don't quite what to know, everybody will want to talk about one of those four things, because that's where their needs are really met in that kind of line of questioning. And that even comes into, if it's a specific product sale that you're selling in a specific industry, then you can go back and apply that principle to asking that person questions about what is it that they're needing from the outcomes in that area. So it's taking that tactic to ask questions and really be interested, to seek to understand before being understood. And I think that is a great segue right into our second question. And I'm going to lead into that as a summary, is that Theodore Roosevelt said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So you said it so well. That rapport is critical. So this kind of leads us right to the second question of, why is selling perceived in such a negative light to so many people? And I know for me, I don't want to be sold. I actually want to be heard. I want to know that this is going to meet my needs, whatever it might be: buying a car, a house, groceries, whatever it is. That's kind of it. So what is your thought on why are people adverse to being sold something?
Selling has a bet. Selling has a bad. Let me go have a shot at this.
Yeah,
Owen.
sure.
It'll be short. Selling has a bad reputation. Everyone's had a poor experience with a salesperson that's trying to ram a product down their throat. Maybe the first car they bought or something like that, right? So it's got to. And there's a history of salespeople not treating people very well. So through your past experience, through the past stories of your friends and your family, salespeople, they have a very low prestige value with a salesperson in most people's head. The other thing is that people don't really understand that they're selling all the time, that they're actually salespeople. When they all go look for a job, they're selling their talents. Supervisor, you're asking people to do things, you're motivating people to do things, you're selling all the time. So they don't think of the natural sales things that they do as being sales tasks. So they probably don't. They have this this blank slate about what does a salesperson do? What are the skills of sales? So when people come into a class and they start to learn about sales, they're often very surprised that they do use a lot of sales skills. They sell a lot in their lives. So it's an eye-opening experience to be trained in sales, I think, for the novice person. I also think that the thought of rejection, the thought of asking somebody for a sale, asking for something from somebody and being told no, is like a crushing thought for most people. Not many people like to be rejected. In fact, it may be one of the biggest fears people have, is the fear of rejection. So, and sales in the past has all been about surviving the rejection factor. Irwin, take it from there.
So when I was thinking about this question, thanks for sharing, Bob. And you hit on the second one. I was gonna hit on the second one, so you cut it to that way for me. Like when people think of sales, they think of it from a perspective of, I'm gonna sell, and there's fear in selling. because of the fear of rejection, the fear of expressing yourself. And I mean, if you even think about finding your first mate, like that alone, I remember was a big growth process in sales, which is you need to go out and before the days of Tinder, you need to go out and talk to people like women or, whoever you're attracted to cold. And it's terrifying. It's, that was a huge barrier to it's just scary, because you don't know what to say. You don't want to do. It's uncomfortable. You're going to fall on your face. You're going to look bad. So much fear. So when I think of that question, I think of it from I'm selling perspective. It's actually more negative than being sold to, because I find that a lot of salespeople I talk to are actually pretty decent. And I think when you think of the world of on being sold to side, the negativity really comes from regret when they were sold something that just didn't work out, or the product and services isn't what they want. And because of a great salesperson or feeling pressure, I don't think people like the pressure of the close when they really aren't in their heart congruent with the purchase, or if they were, they end up getting something that they did not want to buy, or they have regret at the end of the day. So I think when I think of sales and the bad rep it gets, it's usually because the salesperson is so darn good in certain ways, or assertive, that they sell them something that they didn't really they didn't get the value out of it. And there's more of that than great products and great salespeople. And I was fortunate to partner with companies that have great solutions, but I also heard horror stories where there's a new feature or a new product line, and a customer was sold because of the great relationship and rapport, and because of the first product, it didn't work, and he ended up getting fired from the job. And I'm just like, great salesperson, closed the deal, but as a customer, you were trusting that salesperson and you bought the product, and you end up getting fired because that was one of the first product lines in that corporation, and now you're out of a job. And that I think of is so just regret, or being too good of a salesperson, that's where the negativity comes from, is that pain. Because when you're talking to great salespeople, I mean, I remember going to even an Audi dealership, or just like some of these people have learned not to. There's a from what I've seen in salespeople today, is there's more skill than maybe in the past. And I always felt like the people, maybe I'm just lucky, the salespeople I've always run into are pretty understanding of my needs for the most part. But anyways.
Yeah, I think you've said it really, really well, and that we can oversell very easily because we're focused on what we want or the company wants, instead of being focused back on what are the actual needs of the client. And I think that's really important, that we're truly seeking what it is that they really want. Because if we don't understand that, then invariably there will be misunderstanding. And then from misunderstanding comes mistrust. And ultimately, trust is the key to any relationship if we want it to be win-win. Would you guys agree with that?
100%. 100%.
So, as we're talking here about, bringing value, what do we think that the best way to ensure that we do bring value? Is it always trying to close a sale? Or is sometimes the best response, when you've understood that there isn't the right fit, that you actually tell them the truth and it's not a good fit, but recommend another party or another competitor, even in that case? This is a real focus on that truth factor. And for me, I've had great success in my selling career, having owned and operated 9 different companies. And one of the things I've always said is I never breach trust. It's better to empower the person to get their need met, even with a competitor, than to promise something that we cannot deliver fully to fulfill their needs. because we want to retain the trust so that we have an opportunity to talk again when ours is the right solution to fulfill their need. If you breach trust, you lose any further opportunity. And I've also found that when I've given away a sale, I've had more clients than not come back and give me a sale because they're looking to find what my need is, because I was giving what I want to get, which is really the golden rule. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you. And that comes out of the good book, right? Basically, love God and love others as yourself. So if we actually go about giving people what they need, they're going to look to reciprocate, reciprocity, and give that same back. Do you feel that's a truth in your guys' experience?
Irwin, do you want to go on that one? Or shall I give it a shot?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob. Yeah, go ahead.
Heath, I think you're right. I think that if you can't provide 100% solution and be really proud of it, of the solution at the end, I think it's a real mistake to go forward, because in the end you're going to cause disappointment. You're going to break trust, and that's not going to lead to a future good relationship. There'll be a lot of backtracking that you'll have to do on that. So I think that, like, it might depend on, like you hear Irwin talk about, it may depend on what you're selling to. So maybe it's a short sale, it's a technical sale, and it's quickly implemented. It's not that big a deal. But the stuff that I sell, which is leadership development and human training, services training, these are long-term services. So we come in, we work with an organization, and we stay for years. We become their trusted training partner. So a sale for us is all about the relationship. It's all about the working together. It's all about figuring out together what exactly they need. And that's another interesting process, is when you start talking to your clients, potential clients, about their problem, they often have it not quite right. You have an idea of what they need, but when you really get into it, it's like, no, the solution is got to be built together. And so you start out with one thought, but you end up 180 degrees from that thought somewhere down the way, but then you provide what they really need. So I think that for me, it's, again, in my business, with my long-term thought process, that I want to be working with them as a trusted, valued associate or partner on their human development. It's exceptionally important to be right, and right as much as you can, which is, we always shoot for 100%, right? 100%.
Yeah, I like what you said, is sometimes the customer doesn't know what they need. And the analogy, and this is why, back to your question, Heath, is it's important as a sales professional to, here's an analogy I would use, is the chocolate covered broccoli. And what the heck is that, right? Is people may think that they want something, but they don't realize, there's a discovery process to find out what they really need. And maybe what they want to buy isn't what they really need. So I'll give you an example. Okay. When I went to go on the journey of writing my first book, I purchased a program to help with learning how to write a book, right? That was the chocolate. The chocolate was, I wanted to learn to write a book. In the process, I learned so many different things I had never even considered, like hiring an editor, doing graphic design, or hiring people to help with doing the book cover, outsourcing, marketing, creating my web page, my landing page. And if you told me those are the things I needed, right, I don't think I would have bought anything, right? But it was what the gift behind it, which is the broccoli. That was what I learned in the process. But if they sold me that, I'd be like, ugh, I don't want to learn how to do marketing or editing, but that pursuit of the chocolate, which is having a finished product of a book, that was what led me through so many different skills and things I never would have learned on my own. And that is what I heard from what you're saying, Bob, is something a customer, your job as a salesperson is to underline what they need or what they think they need. And then there's other benefits in your service or offering that they'll discover down the line. But it's important to find what is it going to get them to kind of convert or sign on now. And as long as your service and solution that you're providing, there's potentially back end things that can help with. So I would agree with you. A big part of the discovery process is qualification and making sure we're not wasting each other's time. And at the end of the day, if my service or offering isn't what you need, yes, by all means, help and be from a place of service and loop in people and just be as helpful as you possibly can. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
And to build on that thought, Irwin, it's a great thought. Earlier you said that's the fun of sales. And another complication or the fun of sales is often what I find is when we're selling first level sales to somebody, and then they have to go and get the authority or bring somebody else into the sale. So in my particular business, I have to make the sale 3 times often. There's 3 different people. You start with one person, then they bring in one, or you try to get everybody in the room, right? But sometimes the next person is brought in. Different person, different set of needs, different vision. And then you have to have the skills and the patience and the interest to actually bring all those ideas together so you're all on the same page. And then the third person comes in, again, different personality, different needs, different wants, different vision a lot of the time. And any one of those people could have the authority to say no or yes. You got to have the right person in the room to make the decision too. So it's a fascinating business, sales, to make sure you get the right people in the room, understand their personalities, ask the right questions, and work through that whole process of building that team approach.
So just on this question, I think then the key element is that we got to have an attitude and be growth focused. That's learning and gaining clarity and understanding on their specific needs. That then allows us that clarity to bring the focus in to help the people fulfill that specific need that they're going to need to, whether it be product or service. And that brings that fit in and allows us to give them the value that they're really wanting and desiring. And that feeling, right, is really what drives things more than even the facts a lot of the time. As we've all learned in our life, is that how we feel, our emotions ultimately drive our actions. And whether it's for us or against us, but especially in the art of selling, I think that's really an important part, is that we make it easier by giving them what they really need. As you said with your story of the chocolate, you got to sometimes give them something that they really want. But with that want, you're wrapping it, or not saying wrapping it the other way around, that chocolate is wrapping in what they actually need, so that they're going to be, after it's all said and done, content and feel that they were listened to and had value in that. That ultimately then gets us that long-term trust and that rapport that we spoke about, and drives that relationship forward. So we've talked a lot about theory here, and a lot about, our experience as all being experienced sales guys. What though can we give to our audience here today that's practical? In other words, what are some of our processes? Let's share some story and we actually do to build that rapport and to aid people in the actual execution of it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. Bob, if you want to jump ahead, like, by all means. I think because I was a lead, like, waiting for this, which was sales process. Because I think as a listener, when I'm listening in, there's a lot of interesting things. We talked about rapport. We talked about coming from intention. We talked about asking questions. But every scalable and high growth sales company needs a sales process, and that was what's missing in this entire conversation. is because there isn't a lack of process, or we haven't discussed process. And God, I mean, that's like a whole training in its own right. But what you want to do, because every sales company and division and product is very different. There are simple sales processes. Like, let's assume you're selling to one individual. All right. So it's very prospecting, get the meeting, qualification, qualify the needs, and then close, negotiate and close, right? That's a very simple sales process. Now, if you're talking about what Bob had to go through, which is a multi-layer B2B enterprise sales, that's another huge training in a nutshell, but it's the same thing. It's profiting, finding how can you get that meeting with the right individual buyer? When you're on that meeting, how do you build rapport and quickly show your expertise and qualify? I consider that the first call is the qualification space. You need to qualify, and then you want to have a next step. Most technology companies, you need to have some sort of pain, and there's a whole sales process around how to qualify, right? In our business, we have MEDIC or BANT. So BANT is budget, authority, need, timeline. MEDIC is metrics, economic buyer, decision process, decision criteria, identify pain, champion, and competition. And my belief personally is, out of all the qualities that I just mentioned, BANT and MEDIC, the most important, actually, maybe we can kind of round robin this. It's difficult without the visuals of what MEDIC is. But the key thing is, I personally believe that after doing years and years of sales training, it boils, the most important qualification piece in all the different attributes I just mentioned is the champion. It's all about finding the champion. So Bob just mentioned, hey, I have 3 people I need to talk to. So what he's doing is he's building champions within the organization. He's finding this person, level 1, may be the champion. And what is a champion? A champion is someone who's going to fight for you when you're not in the room. That's it. They have power and influence, and they fight for you when you're in the room. So, like, I believe personally in the whole sales process, it's all about building the champion. At the end of the day, what we're talking about, building rapport, finding needs, it's all about that champion and how to build that person. And I think most young people don't have a process or to realize, is this a champion or are they a coach? Are they a coach or are they a saboteur? And people a lot of times think that they're selling to the champion when in reality they have no power. They have no ability to make any decision or loop in their decision makers. I don't know I can go on a rant on this because there's I'm trying to condense, a decade worth of sales information into a nutshell, right? Without having to spend the entire call doing this, because we could go a long. But the sales process.
I'm really enjoying, Irwin. I'm really enjoying the rant. This is really great information. So you got some more stuff you want. You keep going. This is gold. This is gold for a person listening to this right now, and for them to understand a little bit of that process. Like when you're starting to talk to a person, like we have to turn them, in your word, into a champion. Like maybe some hints on that. Like how do you recognize what the questions you might ask to figure out if they have simply.
It's easy.
Basic questions is one of the basic questions is.
I'll solve it for you, Bob. After doing so many forecast calls, after closing so many deals, and now coaching, I had a friend of mine who I'm helping him with his deal with Microsoft right now. And he's like, Irwin, I told him, like, everything I'm teaching is champion-based selling, which is, first is identifying the champion. Who do I think the champion is? Getting the meeting. Then you're selling, right? Why you're the expert, why, what problems. And he's stuck with the deal in Microsoft. And I'm like, here's the number one thing that no sales training is teaching, which is you need to test your champion. And he's like, well, what does that mean? And I'm like, okay, well, again, the definition of a champion is a person who fights for you, who has power and influence, and they fight for you when you're not in the room. Because again, that's how deals are done. When the door closes, you leave. They're going to decide whether or not they're going to buy, and they need to fight for you. And if you don't have a champion, they're just saying in our business, if you don't have a champion, you don't have a deal. So many people in sales think it's about the the features and benefits, but they don't focus on what you're really doing is you're building a champion. And then how you realize what a real, like, if you have a champion is you need to test them, which means you need to ask them to do something for you. So it's either, hey, you need to go get permission to go do a trial. Hey, who other people, is it a committee? Is there a boss, or a manager that needs to make a decision? Can you get them a meeting with us? Because that's the test, is if they can't fight for you and they can't get you that other additional person, decision maker in the meeting so that you have another chance to build another champion, you don't really have a champion. And when he can't even do that, or he or she can't do that, you don't have a deal. So you don't spend time wasting time chasing deals that don't exist. And it's a dance. Your job is to, again, build a rapport, build the champion, and then test it. That's the sales process. If I had to simplify a whole huge sales process, it's simply that. And then we go into execution phase, which is like, okay, now you're asking for the meeting, but how do you know what to ask for? And that's why there's different frameworks to create different questions, so that when you're in a meeting with somebody, you're not just asking questions about, their family, which is great, right? Those are great rapport, but you can build rapport quickly by showing your expertise and showing that they have pain. And the minute you have the rapport, you don't need to focus on rapport building, but what you need to focus on is building the business case. And there's a whole framework for that. So when I think of non-complex sales, it's simply BANT, B-A-N-T. So do they have budget? Authority. Authority is another fancy word for champion. N is the need, and then timeline. It's just a year from now, 2 years from now. That's very simplistic, right? I personally believe that, my sales process is something called pin selling, P-I-N-N. Think of a grenade pin. If I had to summarize all the enterprise, how to sell into big companies in a nutshell, it's top-down problems, initiatives, needs, and needs. So in order for a business, if you think about a company like Apple, right, for them to buy something or buy a service, they got to have some sort of corporate problem, which can be figured out from reading their 10K or annual reports. From there, after they have a problem, they're going to create some sort of initiative. And then from there, the people underneath the department is going to have to find a technical need. They're going to, in my space, the software tech space, they're going to find a need that's going to require a technical solution. And those solutions are going to have to solve a personal need. So PIN. So I look at it from that framework as in, okay, so when I speak with someone, how can I draw in? And what we're essentially doing is we're asking different questions to figure out what are the ways that we can attach our service or software to their corporate initiative, because those big companies just don't do deals without some sort of overarching corporate wave or momentum that is going towards. So that's my personal thing that I teach is, PIN process. And whenever it gets so complex, so let's say we're 3 months into a sales cycle and I'm with my manager and we're like, what's going on with the deal? Well, what we do is we call the MEDDIC, MEDDICC. So it's metrics. So in the sales process, you want to find out what are the metrics, what are the different, it could be time savings, it could be dollar savings. What are the metrics in deal? And those are some of the questions that you can ask to generate how you can find more pain. Then we go into E, which is your economic buyer. So the economic buyer is different than the champion a lot of the times. These are the people who finally signs the check. Could be the CFO, could be the CEO, that could be the president of the company. But it's important to distinguish that. And a lot of times sales professionals don't even get to the economic buyer. Then you have the decision process. So how do they make a decision? Is it a committee? Is there a boss involved? What are so my secret sauce on how to find the D is asking your champion, can you walk me backwards from a purchase order being signed? What are the things that need to happen? Okay, we need to go through red line. It's the agreement. Before that, we need to negotiate pricing. Who negotiates pricing is probably this director, right? So how do you guys price it out? When do we do pricing conversation? Well, what happens before that? Well, we need to get the thumbs up on the project. So how do we do that? Well, there's an IT committee meeting, right? And then what do we do for that? It's so then what you do is you start mapping out all the steps in the deal with your champion from end to going backwards to where you are today. And then that's how these big contracts get done on time, is because they're able to mitigate the risk and set up the necessary meetings through understanding how the business buys, anything. So that's MEDD. So decision criteria. Every company, when they buy something, they're going to have some sort of like requirements. It could be security requirements. It could be, these features or functions that I think is really important. You got to figure out what are the needs versus the wants. And then you want to identify pain. We talked about pain a lot. So that's the I. C is the most important thing, which is champion and testing the champion. And then finally, C again is your competitor. A lot of mistakes and I think rookie salespeople is they don't ask, what are the alternatives, because they're just afraid to. And when you understand what they're looking at, you kind of understand what is the status quo, or what are you being compared against. And that way you can also ask, what do you like about it? And then you start distinguishing what are the things that they value, which is their needs. And you have an opportunity to sell around that and position your solution or your offering or your messaging around what they care about. So when I think of sales process, that's why it's like I'm trying to condense decades of sales training into a 20-minute conversation. But there are frameworks that you can add in your knowledge, so that when you're talking to a customer, what it does is it goes back and okay, I haven't asked a question about the process. I haven't asked a question about the competition. And it's when you're in the moment with a customer, you sometimes lose sense of time and lose sense of it's like sometimes selling in the middle of selling, it's an adrenaline rush. You are on peak state. You need to be so present to the customer that you forget all these different things that you need to ask. And having a framework helps create some structure to make sure that, oh man, I forgot to ask about this, forgot about it. That way you have an opportunity to de-risk your deal or to help build a champion, build a business case. And that's what I love about the business is or learning, that's what I love about doing it is actually taking that conceptual framework and actually being able to replicate it again and again and again. And that's how you are consistently being able to create that confidence. Oh my God, every time I pick up the phone, I'm dialing for dollars, because I know that this framework can reduce my time wasted. It'll reduce my customer's time wasted, and I can consistently map out a deal with my customer. And that's, if you want to continue. So I share with you the qualification stage, but now we go into how to drive the deal, which is I use a framework called a mutual action plan, called a MAP. So if Bob, you and I were trying to do a deal, I would ask you, okay, let's assume that you're excited about it. You like the business case. And I ask you, walking backwards, how do you get a deal done? What you're doing in that case is, if they're willing to tell you all the different steps, what you want to then do is create that mutual action plan, because very complex sales, you need to have all these different meetings, and it could have different resources that the company has, and also your company needs to produce to make sure all the steps are set up at the right time. And creating a new mutual action plan, it was an eye-opening experience when I first saw it, as a new salesperson. It's like, oh my God, you are essentially working with your customer to create all the different complex sales lined up date by date with people on there, and you're controlling your destiny. And that's driving the deal, is learning. I remember as a mistake as a salesperson is people would sell, and then people don't know how to actually close a meeting. They don't know how to close the next steps. And creating a MAP, a mutual action plan, is a great way to help people, guide people together. So we're doing this as a project together versus me forcing a set of meetings down your throat that you don't really see what's the point of. And then we go into negotiate and close, which is, another, there's so many game theory and different sales trainings and things around how do you present your pricing? How do you create different offerings to get the incentives that you want? And I think that's what people hate about salespeople. Is a lot of times in first calls, well, what's the price? Well, great sales professionals won't really show pricing until they build value up. So they they kick it down the can. And then when they do present pricing, they built so much value that they're sometimes charging an arm and a leg for it. but there's different strategies on how to present pricing to get what everybody wants. It could be adding additional. Yeah. Anyways, I can keep.
A matter of price, right? It should be a matter of value, right? To the place where it's not if they can afford it, because they can't afford not to, in that aspect. So one of the I think that I can see already here, and I'm so grateful for our time today, is that we need to almost make a series out of this. And I'll be talking to you more about that and how we could actually create some niche topics and resolve some of these needs that people have in communication and in the ability to help them in the sales of life, because it's not just about work. Every day we're selling, whether we're talking to our wife, whether we're talking to our children, whether we're talking to our friends about, we're going for a motorbike ride. Well, where are we going? Oh, we should go there. Oh, we should go there. Well, somebody's going to have to do enough sale to bring enough value that a decision gets made. So anytime there's a decision, there's basically a sale that's been made. So I've got some really clear ideas on how to sort of summarize this up. But Bob, why don't you have a quick go at a summary, and then I'll have a go on that as well, on how to try to summarize the amazing value that Irwin has brought to us and to our audience today.
Well, I'd like to thank her, and Irwin, thank you so much. You brought really great, crisp ideas about sales to people that are listening, and I think that any one of those ideas would be helpful to someone just to learn about qualifying, as an example. I think you did a great job today, so thanks so much. I think in summary, what I thought Irwin really did a good job today with was talking about sales and saying that it is fun. You can see he speaks about it with passion. He speaks about it with a level of intelligence. It's a sophisticated process that is exceptionally challenging, and there are many sales jobs available that produce enormous wealth for families. If you can be a good salesperson and enjoy the process, enjoy the challenge of it, you learn so much. Like you were talking about 10 years of sales training, right? This is an exciting career for people that they can feed their families, they can create really good wealth for themselves. And there's tons of opportunity out there. So in summary, I think sales are fun. It's the most enjoyable. It's one of the most enjoyable things that I do. I love meeting new people. So you go to meet a new person, you find out what their needs are, you find out what their challenges are, and you go there with a servant heart, and you get to know that person very, very well in a very short period of time when you ask the right questions, and you can either be helpful or you can pass them on to somebody else. And I think that's what sales is to me, meeting new people and helping them with their problems. So I would encourage people that they're looking for a career, they're looking for a way to produce wealth for themselves, that sales is maybe an important part of almost anything they do, and lots to learn. Thanks, Irwin.
Thank you.
So I'd really love to take the opportunity now to just try to summarize what's been said today and what was been learned today. And let's see if I can clearly define the uncommon truth about bringing value. First and foremost, that bringing value requires great communication. And we need to have passion, courage, intentionality about building trust and rapport. And this process of bringing value, I'm going to define in an acronym, which you've so eloquently done so many times today, as the PASS method. You've affirmed today many of the things that I've learned over my 30 years of business, and I really think it's really important to go through that. So first and foremost, what we've talked about is P being personally connecting. We need to be interested in what influences the people we're talking to, the customer's needs. Really being clear on what needs are needing to be met. And I'm not just talking about the actual physical needs of delivering of a product or service. I'm talking about the person and or the organization or a team. What are those needs that are affecting them and will give them what they need, that feeling of significance or certainty that it's going to happen, or the connection it's going to create within their team or their culture. We need to be interested in them. And that's where passion comes in. The second is to ask. We need to ask great questions, targeted questions, and really seek to understand those needs before we try to be understood or to communicate anything. Because we can completely miss the boat if we're not clear on the target. So defining those needs that they want provided for them is critical, and that comes through asking great questions. The last question I think we need to ask is ultimately, would it be okay to share? If I could provide, and then you list the needs, would you be interested in that type of a solution? And ultimately, by sharing, you ask for that opportunity to share and then move forward to tell them something that's going to bring them the value and that need that they want. If you cannot provide a solution, then share a possible solution that could work for them, even though it may be outside of your organization. But again, it's always back to building that rapport and the trust, because from that solid foundation, we're moving into the proper way of supporting a person. That's the second S. Support appropriately. Sometimes it means to let the deal go because it's not going to be win-win. But most of the time, it's by providing a simple map, which you called a mutual action plan. I sometimes call it a massive action plan, or a process that's simple as possible. The goal is to empower our customers as the client champion. Empower them with the solutions so that when they go speak to the final decision makers, they are perceived and have been empowered to be that subject matter expert and the champion within the organization for us. Because there has to be that trust. Give them the opportunity to be an authority in providing their team and organization that expertise that we've been able to provide them so they can move the process forward and test them, as you said, Irwin. We need to create a partnership mindset that there is a stake in the game for both. It's win-win or no deal. Ultimately, how is that done? You keep asking for them to move forward. That comes from knowing step one through to step whatever, the end. But ultimately, we can know and assess where we are in the process, in that map, and then next step. And each person being accountable in a partnership mindset to move forward. So pass, personally connect, ask great questions, focused on their needs, share solutions and value that will provide those needs, and support appropriately. That's how we can pass, in my mind, based on the education, Irwin, that you've shared, and Bob, and your wisdom as well. That's kind of my summary of what the uncommon truth is about bringing value. We greatly appreciate your time here today. I'm looking forward, and I'm going to ask right now for that second step. And I think I'd like to reach out to you, and let's set up a time for our audience to be able to learn more about you and your coaching abilities and what you're doing with these skills and techniques in our next opportunity to come on and seek the uncommon truth. But we'll bring that back to bring out that expertise you have to our audience.
That sounds good.
Excellent.
It was great, guys. I appreciate the time, and feel free to just Google my name, irwinki.com, if you ever want to reach out. On Instagram and YouTube as well. So
nice.
Yeah, appreciate everybody.
Nice. Well done, guys. Thank you again for joining us on The Uncommon Truth, everyone, and we look forward to talking to you soon.